The Great Gilly Hopkins. Chapter 3. More Unpleasant Surprises. In the tiny mirror over the bureau, Gilly noted with little satisfaction that her hair was a wreck. Yesterday, before the bubble gum got into it, it had looked as though it simply needed combing, but today it looked like a lot that had been partially bulldozed. An uprooted tree here, a half wall with a crumbling chimney there. Oh, her hair was magnificent. It would run Trotter wild. Gilly bounced down the stairs and into the kitchen. She held her head very straight as she sat at the kitchen table and waited for the fireworks. Side note, she's waiting for Trotter to tell her to go fix her hair. She held her head very high. "I'm going to take you down to the school a little after 9 o'clock, you hear?" Trotter said. Oh, of course, Gilly heard. She tilted her head a little in case Trotter couldn't see her head. "If I take you down earlier, we just going to have to sit there and wait till they can take care of us. And I'd leave to sit here at my own table with a cup of coffee, wouldn't you, Gilly, honey?" She put a bowl of steaming hot cereal down in front of Gilly, and Gilly nodded her head vigorously. Yes, hoping Trotter would notice. William Ernest was staring at her with his glasses steamed up from the oatmeal. Gilly bared her teeth and shook her head violently at him. The boy snuffled loudly and ducked his head. "Well, you need a tissue, William Ernest, honey?" Trotter pulled one from her apron pocket and gently wiped his nose. "And here's a clean tissue for school, honey." Trotter leaned over and tucked a tissue into his pants pocket. Gilly craned her neck over the table as though she were trying to see the contents of W.E.'s pockets. Her head was within a couple of feet of Trotter's eyes. Oh, the woman was sure to notice. "William Ernest, he got promoted to the Orange Reading Group yesterday. Didn't you, William Ernest, honey?" The little boy nodded his head, but he kept his eyes on his bowl. "You gonna have to do some reading out loud and show Gilly how great you are at coming along with your reading these days, William Ernest." W.E. looked up for one split second with terror in his eyes at the thought of that. Trotter missed the look, but oh no, not Gilly. She smiled widely and shook her half-bulldozed head emphatically. "In Orange, they use hardback books," Trotter was explaining. "It's a real big step to be in the Orange group." She leaned over Gilly to put some toast on the table. "We really worked hard for this." "Ah, yeah, so old W.E.'s getting ahead, is he?" Trotter gave her a puzzled look. "Yeah, he doing just fine." "Before you know it," Gilly heard herself saying loudly, "he'll be blowing his own nose and combing his own hair." He already does," said Trotter quietly. "Leastways most of the time." She sat down with a loud sigh. "Pass me a piece of that toast, will you, Gilly?" Gilly picked up the plate and raised it to the height of her hair and passed it across to Trotter at that level, hoping she'd notice. "Thank you, honey." And at 8:30, Trotter got William Ernest off to school. Gilly had long since finished her breakfast, but she sat at the kitchen table with her head propped on her fists. From the doorway, she could hear old Mother Goose Trotter honkering over her gosling. "Okay, Big Orange, you show them down there today, you hear?" Trotter said finally, and then the heavy door shut, and she was heading back to the kitchen. And as she got to the door, Gilly sat up straight and shook her head for all she was worth. You got a tick or something, Gilly, honey?" Side note, a tick is when you have some kind of a body action that you can't control. Some people have a tick with their eyes. Some people have a tick with the shoulder or their mouth. Trotter's very well aware of what Gilly's doing. She's just not buying into it. "No." "Well, I would have thought you was too young for the palsy." Side note, palsy is a short-term word for cerebral palsy. The huge woman murmured, sliding into her seat with the cup of coffee she promised herself earlier. I see you got sneakers on. That's good. You're supposed to have them for gym. Can you think of anything else you need for school, Gilly? Gilly shook her head, but only half-heartedly. She was beginning to feel like an over-sharpened pencil. I think I'm going to go upstairs till it's time to go. Oh, while you're up there, honey. Yeah? Gilly sprang to attention. Would you make the beds, will you? It does look messy to leave them unmade all day, and I'm not much on running up and down them stairs. Gilly banged the door to her room for all she was worth. She spit every cuss word, every obscenity she'd ever heard through her teeth. Oh, but it wasn't enough. That ignorant hippopotamus, that walrus-faced imbecile, that devil, that Charter wouldn't even let a drop fall from her precious William Ernest's baby's nose, but she was going to let Gilly go to school, a new school where she didn't know anybody, looking like a scarecrow? Oh, Miss Ellis was surely going to hear about this. Gilly slammed her fist into the pillow. There had to be a law against foster mothers who showed such gross favoritism of one child over another. Well, she was going to show that lard can a thing or two. She yanked open the top left drawer and she pulled out a broken comb, which she vigorously jerked through the wilderness on her head, only to be defeated by a patch of bubble gum. She ran into the bathroom and she rummaged through the medicine chest until she found a pair of nail scissors with which to chop off the offending hair. And when, despite her assault by comb and scissors, there were a few strands that refused to lie down meekly, she soaked her hair mercilessly into submission with water. Oh, she was going to show the world. She was going to show them who Galadriel Hopkins was. She was not to be trifled with. Passage of time. Now we're down at the school. I see they call you Gilly, said Mr. Evans, the principal. I can't even pronounce the poor child's real name, said Trotter, chuckling in what she must believe was a friendly manner. It didn't help Gilly's mood. She was still seething over the hair combing. Well, Gilly's a fine name, said Mr. Evans, which confirmed to Gilly that at school, too, she was fated to be surrounded by foes. The principal was studying records. School records. That must have arrived from her former school, Hollywood Gardens Elementary School. And he coughed several times while looking at them. Well, he said, I think this young lady needs to be in a class that will challenge her. Well, she's plenty smart, if that's what you mean. Oh, Trotter, you dummy. How do you know how smart I am? You never laid eyes on me until yesterday. I'm going to put you in Miss Harris's class. We have some departmentalization in 6th grade, but... You got what in 6th grade? Oh, Trotter, please shut your fool mouth. But the principal didn't seem to notice what a dope Trotter was. By the way, departmentalization is what Miss Gilbert and I do. I do the reading and social studies. She does the math and science. He explained patiently how some of the 6th grade classes moved around for math and reading and science, but Miss Harris, she kept the same group of kids all day. Ugh, what a blinking bore. They went up 3 flights of ancient stairway to Miss Harris's room, slowly, so that Trotter would not collapse. The corridor stank of oiled floors and cafeteria soup, and Gilly had thought she hated all schools so much that they no longer could pain or disappoint her. But she felt heavier with each step. She felt like a condemned prisoner walking the endless last mile to death. They paused before the door marked Harris 6. Mr. Evans knocked. and a tall, tea, dark-colored woman, crowned with a bush of black hair, opened the door. She smiled down on the three of them because she was even taller than the principal. Gilly shrank back, bumping into Trotta's huge body, which made her jump forward again quickly. Oh my God, on top of everything else, her teacher was black. Nobody seemed to take notice of her reaction, unless you counted a flash of brightness in Mrs. Harris's dark eyes. Trotta patted Gilly's arm, murmured something that ended in honey, and then she and the principal floated backwards, closing Gilly in to Harris 6. The teacher led her to an empty desk in the middle of the classroom. She asked for Gilly's jacket, which she handed over to another girl to hang on the coat rack at the back of the room, and she directed Gilly to sit down, and then went up and settled herself at the large teacher's desk to glance through the handful of papers Mr. Evans had given her. In a moment she looked up, a warm smile lighting her dark face. Galadriel Hopkins. What a beautiful name. From Tolkien, of course. By the way, side note, Tolkien is the author of Lord of the Rings. From Tolkien, of course. No, said Gilly, from Hollywood Gardens. Miss Harris laughed, a sort of golden laugh. No, I mean your name, Galadriel. It's the name of a great queen in a book by a man named Tolkien. But of course you already knew that. Hell, no one ever told her name came from a book. Should she pretend she knew all about it? Or should she just play dumb? I'd like to call you Galadriel, if you don't mind. It's such a lovely name. No. Everyone in the class was looking at Gilly peculiarly. She must have yelled louder than she intended to. I would prefer, she said tightly, to be called Gilly. Yes. Miss Harris's voice was more steel than gold now. Yes, Gilly it is then. Well, she turned her smile on the rest of the class. Where were we, boys and girls? The clamor of their answers clashed in Gilly's brain. She started to put her head down on the desk, but someone was shoving a book in her face. It wasn't fair. Nothing was fair. She had once seen a picture in an old book of a red fox on a high rock surrounded by snarling dogs. That's how she felt. It was like that. She was smarter than every kid in here. She was smarter than all of them. But there were too many of them. They had surrounded her, and in their stupid ways, they were determined to wear her down. Miss Harris was leaning over her, and Gilly pulled away as far as she could. Gilly, did you do division with fractions at Hollywood Gardens? Gilly shook her head. Inside, she seethed. It was bad enough having to come to this broken-down old school, but to be behind, to seem dumber than the rest of the kids, to have to appear a fool in front of them, because almost half of the class was black. And she was going to look dumb to them, a bunch of... Why don't you bring your chair up to my desk, Gilly, and we'll work on it together. Ugh. Gilly snatched up her chair, and she beat Miss Harris to the front of the room. Oh, she was going to show them. At recess time, Monica Bradley, one of the other white girls in the class, she was supposed to look after Gilly on the playground. Help her out. But Monica, she was more interested in leaning against the building and talking with her friends, which she did. She kept her back towards Gilly as she giggled and gossiped with two other 6th grade girls, one of whom was black with millions of tiny braids all over her head. She looked like something from Africa. Not that Gilly cared. Why should she? They could giggle their stupid lives away, and she'd never let it bother her. And she turned her back on them. That would show them. And just then a ball jerked loose from the basketball game nearby and rushed towards her. Gilly grabbed the ball. Balls were friends, and she hugged it and ran over to the basket and she threw it up. But she had been in too much of a hurry, and the ball kissed the rim but refused to go in, and angrily she jumped and caught it before it bounced. She was dimly aware of a protest from the players. Psst, they were boys and mostly shorter than her, not even worthy of notice. She shot the ball again, and this time with care, and the ball arched and sank cleanly into the basket. She pushed someone out of the way and grabbed it just below the net. "Hey, who do you think you are?" one of the boys yelled. One of the boys, a black boy as tall as she was, tried to pull the ball from her hands. She spun around and she knocked him to the concrete. And then she shot the ball again. And she banked the ball off the backboard neatly into the net. And she grabbed it once more. Now all the boys were after her. She began to run across the playground, laughing and clutching the ball to her chest. Oh, she could hear the boys screaming behind her, but she was too fast for them. She ran in and out of hopscotch games and right through a jump rope game all the way back to the basketball post, where she shot again and missed wildly in her glee. The boys did not watch for the rebound. They leaped on her. She was on her back, scratching and kicking for all she was worth, and they were yelping like hurt puppies. Hey, what's going on there?" It was Miss Harris, and she was towering above them. The fighting evaporated under her glare. She marched all 7 of them involved in the fight to the principal's office. Gilly noted with satisfaction there was a long red line down the tall boy's cheek. She had actually drawn blood in the fracas. The boys looked a lot worse than she felt. 6-1. Pretty good odds even for Gilly Hopkins. The great Gilly Hopkins. Mr. Evans, the principal, lectured the boys about fighting on the playground, and then he sent them back to their homerooms. But he kept Gilly longer. "Gilly," he said her name as though it were a whole sentence by itself, and then he just sat back in his chair with his fingertips pressed together, and he looked at her. She smoothed her hair and waited, staring him in the eye. People hate when you do that, she thought. You staring them down as though they were the ones who had been bad. They didn't know how to deal with it when you stared them down. And sure enough, the principal looked away first. "Gilly, would you like to sit down?" She jerked her head no. He coughed. "Gilly, I'd rather for us to be friends." Gilly smirked. "We're not going to have fighting on our playground." He looked directly at her. "Or anywhere else around here. And I think you need to understand that, Gilly." She tilted her head sassily and kept her eyes right on his. "You're at a new school, and you have a chance to make a new start if you want to." Oh, so Hollywood Gardens had warned him, eh? Well, so what? The people here would have learned soon enough who she was. Gilly would have made sure of that. She smiled what she knew to be her most menacing smile. "Gilly, if there's any way I can help you, if you just feel like talking to somebody..." "Ugh, God, not one of these understanding adults. Oh, please deliver me, God." She smiled so hard it stretched the muscles around her eyes. "I'm okay. I don't need any help." "Well, if you don't want help, there's no way that I can make you accept it. But Gilly..." He leaned forward in his chair and spoke very slowly. "You are not going to be permitted to hurt other people." She snuffled loudly. Cute. Very cute, she thought. He leaned back and she thought she heard him sigh. Not if I have anything to do with it. Gilly wiped her nose on the back of her hand. She saw the principal half reach for his box of tissues and then pull his hand back. You may go back to your class now. She turned to go. I hope you're going to give us a chance and yourself half a chance, Gilly. She ignored the remark. Nice, she thought, climbing the dark stairs. Only half a day. And already the principal was yo-yoing. Give her a week, boy. A week and she was going to have this whole cussed out place in an uproar. But this afternoon she was going to cool it a little bit. Oh, let them worry. And then tomorrow, or maybe even the next day, wham! She felt her old powers returning. She was no longer tired. And that's the end of chapter 3. As we move further along in the book, you're going to understand why this young lady is as angry as she is.